My name is Reshmi Bhattacharya, and this is how your dinner is causing global warming. Did you know that 90% of meat comes from factory farms? Do you want to learn more about factory farming?
Factory farming began when a farmer in Delaware got an over-delivery of chickens and decided to keep them indoors over the winter instead of returning them. The farmer soon was able to grow a stock of 450 chickens to 250,000 chickens. This was the primary form of factory farming. It wasn't until the 1970s that these practices boomed in giant animal factories. You can see here from 1982 to 2012, factory farms have seen a significant boom. So what is factory farming? A factory farm is a large industrialized farm, a farm on which large numbers of livestock are raised indoors in conditions intended to maximize production at minimal cost. So these images represent a typical factory farm, and this shows how a chicken's body is maximized for production. So the number one cause of factory farming is a growing population. The amount of land can no longer support the amount of people, which leads to an increased demand for faster meat, egg, and dairy production, which leads to increased factory farms. So here's an image that represents the increased global meat consumption, and you can see that from 1961 to 2025, it has increased significantly. The United States Department of Agriculture estimates that livestock and poultry produce about 335 million tons of manure per year. So to put that into perspective, that is about 23.4 cars of waste for each American every year. So that's what this diagram represents if you add it all together. And this shows a factory farm back here, and then all the pig waste runoff that goes into the water in front of it. So to feed all these animals, there has to be a lot of crop. So this shows that how much cropland is used for animal feed in the red versus how much is used for human feed, and animal feed is significantly more. So fossil fuels must be burned in order to produce fertilizers for animal feed crops. Let's talk about the environmental effects. So because of the amount of manure, factory farming accounts for about 37% of methane emissions, which has about 20 times more global warming potential than CO2. So here you can see 1 pound of methane equals 23 pounds of carbon dioxide. When manure is repeatedly over-applied to a farm land, it causes dangerous levels of phosphorus and nitrogen in the land and water supply. In excess amounts, nitrogen robs water of oxygen and destroys aquatic life. So this image shows the manure runoff and the fertilizer runoff from the feed crops, all affecting eutrophication in the oceans and waterways, and it also degrades the soil quality. So factory farming leads to a spread of disease. There are 10 million E. coli per liter, and 89% of E. coli is resistant to drugs. So in this diagram, you can see that grain-fed animals are much more vulnerable to E. coli than grass-fed, which is used in more sustainable practices. And the Center for Disease Control and Prevention estimates that more than 1 million cases of salmonella poisoning in America alone can be directly tied to feed containing animal products from grain-fed animals. So the most surprising one is that water needed to produce 1 pound of meat is 25 gallons versus 1 pound of meat, which is 2,500 gallons. So about 70% of water used in the 11 Western states is dedicated to the raising of food just for animals. And this is surprising because when water shortages occur, citizens are often requested to not wash their cars, not water the lawns, and take shorter showers. However, cutting back on meat consumption would save much more water. So here you can see that non-industrial use of water in California is just 4%, while use for animal agriculture is 47%. And then, so the daily footprint of a vegan would be 300 gallons of water versus a meat eater, which would be 4,000 gallons of water.
Here with Jill and Kat, and we're on our way to the Frying Pan Farm to learn more about the benefits of sustainable farming versus factory farming. As a society, we should aim to replace factory farming with sustainable farming practices.
So, sustainable farming is the production of food, fiber, or other plant or animal products using farming techniques that protect the environment, public health, human community, and animal welfare.
Benefits of sustainable farming are:
unlike industrial farms, which rely on large amounts of fossil fuels to truck feed and animal waste, pasture-based systems take advantage of the animal's own ability to feed itself and spread its own manure.
Pasture-based systems can help the environment, especially through fertilizing the soil and by reducing the amount of grain produced as feed. Because there's less manure, there's less chances of diseases spreading.
In addition, there are less methane emissions. Sustainable farming allows for better soil because animals naturally nourish the soil. Chicken shirt, chicken! Lastly, sustainable farming practices are more ethical.
So why should we care? Well, globally, factory farming causes global warming, eutrophication of our water and soil, and depletes water resources that could have been used for humans. Locally, we can support our local farmers by purchasing our food from them and feel good about buying ethical food while supporting local business. The top 3 things to remember are, although factory farming produces a lot of meat, the negative effects on the environment are atrocious. The next thing is, our dollar is our vote, so we should vote to take care of our planet by buying sustainable products. Lastly, scholars predict that sustainable farming will be the most beneficial farming practices considering humans and the earth.